But there's a BMS tester, BMS validation tester is there. So those are battery pack development, which is usually used for digital tools. Now to validate the cells and validate the battery pack, this is what we need. This is cell tester, usually to understand the cell performance, like the C rates are nothing but the charge rate and discharge rate. Internal resistance. So internal resistance is something the cell has when it's like the resistance to allow the current. So usually IR also keeps on changing when the SOC when it's getting charged or when it's getting discharged. So it's very important to understand the IR, and the temperature of the cell depends on the IR. The higher the IR, the higher the heat generation. And cell capacity. So cell capacity is also something which we have to check. What is the cell capacity degradation after certain number of cycles? So, and then this is the cell testing, cell tester, and then we have module and pack tester. So when the cells are made into modules, we do the same kind of test for the module and the pack. And then we have a BMS tester. So BMS tester, usually once the BMS is developed. So I would like to explain what the BMS does over here. So BMS, as I've told earlier, BMS is the brain of the battery pack. So what BMS does is, there are two kinds of BMS available: active and passive. Everyone uses an active passive BMS, because active is costly. The difference is cell balancing is something which is the core job of the BMS. What is cell balancing is, for example, if there are 14 cells connected in series to give a 48 volt, each cell will have its own, because all cells are not the same. All cells can never be the same. So each cell will have here or there's a tolerance. So this BMS allows the cell to maintain throughout at a same voltage level. So that's how, so if some cell is getting charged, it will stop the cell to get overcharged. It will go up to its extent and it will stop there, and it will wait until all the cells are reaching to that level. For example, if the cell, let us assume a NMC cell, while charging, it has an upper limit of 4.2 volts, and there are 14 cells. And for example, cell number 10 has reached 4.2 or 4.1 volts, which is its set voltage, and the other cells are still at 3.9. In normal scenarios, what happens is, if you leave it, it will go up to 4.1, next to 4.15, 4.2, it can keep on increasing. And the other cells are also going to increase until it will reach its set point. So that means there is no limit on the cell which is already reached its set point. If you don't balance the cell which is reaching the topmost, I mean the cell which is coming first in reaching the voltage limit, will deteriorate faster. What happens is, in that case, it will lead to a capacity degradation, and totally the pack will not be able to deliver its capacity properly. So that is the reason why BMS is used. So one cell will deteriorate faster, other cell will not deteriorate. It will have its own time to deteriorate. So this will create a lot of imbalance in the battery pack. So that's the reason we use BMS for balancing the cells. So it will not allow the cell which has reached its limit, it will not allow the cell to charge even more. It will wait until all the cells are reaching its limit, and then it is completely charged. So this is cell balancing. So this cell balancing are again two types, which I've told: active and passive. So what happens in active balancing is, when the cell number 10, it has reached its 4.1 or 4.2 volts, it will still take the energy. So what happens is, the extra energy is being transferred to other cells. In that way, it will still remain its maximum position, and whatever be the rest amount of energy it is getting, it will transfer to the other cells. In that way, all the other cells also getting the energy, and they'll also reach the set point quickly. That is how the active BMS works. This is just an overview which I have given. It is something similar to this. And then what happens in passive balancing is, the cell which has reached its limit, it will go till that point, and the rest amount of current which is coming to that, it will just dissipate as heat, which is wasting of the energy. So that's the reason most of the people prefer active balancing, but due to some cost constraints and economical solutions, they prefer passive balancing only. But active balancing does this job. But the current consumption for the BMS to do this kind of job for active balancing is higher than what it is for passive balancing. So this is what the BMS does. And BMS also undertakes such kind of protection features, like it takes care of short circuit, it detects short circuit, it detects reverse polarity. Reverse polarity is like positive to negative when someone has interchanged those plugs. That is reverse polarity. And it also has, so not all BMS has, but most of the BMS which needs to have the protection features are over temperature and over temperature control. So the BMS has a few slots allotted where the sensing wires are put on the cells at the hotspots. So usually when you do analysis, you'll understand what the hotspots are. So you will have to pick those hotspots, put your sensing wires there, and you'll understand when the batteries are operating, how much temperature is it raising. So is it well within your operating temperature limit or not? And if it is not, that's how you'll have to see your thermal interface materials or thermal management there. So the heat is dissipated from that. So you'll have to put the sensors at the hot spots, so that you'll detect the temperature there. So when the BMS understands, okay, now your set window is something around 55 degrees centigrade. If any of the cell is crossing 55 degrees centigrade, your BMS will send a signal that this cell or this is a hotspot where the temperature has risen up to 55 degrees. So I am stopping this fan. It will not allow to discharge or charge anymore. So that is a protection feature that a BMS does. And at the same time, BMS also controls the charging and undercharge. So just now I told, while charging, if some cell is reaching a certain limit, it will stop there. It will not allow the cell to charge over that point. So because if it is overcharged, again it deteriorates the cell. So, and also while discharging, you cannot discharge the cell below its lower limit, because it will again lose in the it lead to a capacity degradation, and the life of the cell gets affected. So this is how the BMS helps in maintaining a pack, in maintaining a pack. Life of the pack is well maintained by using the BMS. And with a very good BMS, yes, the life of the pack really, the pack performance is really good. So this is a case study where we have picked up for a three-wheeler. We have taken a 48-volt system and a 100 Ah system. So depending on the charge rates and discharge rates, yes, that is because depending on the C rates, pick three-wheeler vehicle. Usually they are fine. Usually three-wheeler markets are fine with 0.5 C continuous charge and 1 C continuous discharge. So that's the reason. And three-wheeler has a lot of space. Even though the LFP cell chemistry has not great volumetric energy density, but it is good. And since three-wheelers has a lot of space, there's a space below the driver's seat, there is a space at the rear, there is a space below the passenger seat. So there's a lot of space for three-wheelers. So that's the reason, even if you go with LFP, the cost is economical. There is a lot of space so that we can accommodate all the cells there, and at the same time this is a little bit stable, and we get a lot of prismatic cells of higher capacity, which will reduce the number of cells usage. So that's the reason we have gone a three-wheeler with LFP. So as I've mentioned, the nominal voltage is 3.2 volts and the operating voltage is 2.5 to 3.65. Therefore, we need 16 cells to connect in series to get the 48 volts voltage. So 48 volts is basically the voltage, but if you connect 16 cells in series, it will give up to 51.2, which is good, which will give. So it is 50. Actually the thing is it's 48 volts and 100 Ah, which is 4.8 kilowatt hour. But if we get, if because we are connecting 16 cells in parallel in series, it's 51.2. So we are actually getting the energy of 5.1 kilowatt hour, which is good. Having an extra energy is always good compared to matching it tightly. And then since it's 100 Ah, we'll go with a prismatic cell. A prismatic cell, we can choose either 50 Ah or we can go with 100 Ah. If this is 50 Ah, we'll need to connect two cells in parallel to get 100 Ah. So that makes a configuration of 16S 2P. If we go with a cell of 100 Ah, we can straight away connect 16 cells in parallel and we'll get 51.2 volts, and 100 Ah is anyhow there in one cell's capacity. So that is 16S 1P. So the number of cells you connect more in parallel, usually that is called 2p, 3p or 4p. A series is something when you connect the cells in series, that's called as 16s or 17s or 18s. So that is what S and P. S is series, P is pair. Now the next most important is pack fitment, because now we have assumed a three-wheeler. Space usually doesn't become a big constraint, but whereas in two-wheelers, yes, that becomes a really big constraint. That's the reason most of the two-wheelers use cylindrical cells, because it's a little bit flexible. So the next step you to choose is the pack fitment into the available space dimensions, and how the cells have to be arranged so that you can arrive at a pack dimensions, so that it can easily go inside. And similarly, the BMS and wiring harness. So why it has to be planned accordingly in a very good way is because whenever there's a damage, there's a BMS which gets affected, and most of the times the BMS is replaced, the job is done. So when you design or when you make a pack, it should be taken care that the BMS is serviceable. You don't have to open up the whole pack and take a BMS out of it. If the BMS is accessible well, it has to be designed accordingly. So yeah, and some of the critical parameters over here is thermal management, because if you are using a 100 Ah cell, for example, let us assume it has an internal resistance of maybe uh, 10 milliohms. So usually the heat generated is I square R. R is the internal resistance and I is the current, and you're drawing something around 100 amperes at 1C. So it is I square R. So how the current, the more current you draw, the higher the heat is generated. So if you're using a cell of 100 Ah or 50 Ah, it will have its own implication of heat generation. But another advantage of using a prismatic cell is there is a lot of area available. So you can put a thermal pad, which is basically which basically has a conductivity of 2 watt per meter Kelvin or 3 watt per meter Kelvin or such kind of conductivity. You can put a thermal pad, and you can get in touch with. We can put aluminum enclosure so that the heat is directly transferred through the thermal pad to the enclosure, and the heat is extracted from there. If there is no thermal pad, what happens? Then there is air, which is a very bad conductor of heat, which is basically an insulator, and the heat it will keep the heat trapped inside. And once the sensor senses that the heat is there, it will switch off. The bad BMS would switch off automatically. So there would be capacity present inside the pack, but you won't be able to use it because it's not thermally managed well. So it's very important also for the pack's efficiency that the heat is extracted as much as possible, also for the pack's life also. So it's very important that you use a very good thermal interface materials on the side walls for the pack to extract the heat as much as possible. Now this is the stage-wise battery pack development. Now if you see, there are four different phases. What is cell sorting, module assembly, pack assembly, and final testing? So cell sorting, which is basically I have told like every cell is different from another cell. And no two cells can ever be same. So that's the reason we have to do a cell sorting. So when we sort a cell, cell is sorted depending upon its internal impedance or the internal resistance. So usually in cylindrical cells or any of the cells, what happens is all the cells of similar internal resistance is grouped together, so that all the cells of similar type, or maybe which is there is a tolerance factor which we put in. For example, if there is, we put a tolerance factor of 1 milliohm. So all the cells which are in that range of 1 milliohm are sorted together. They are put together in a bin. So what happens is when you make a pack, all the cells of similar cells are made into a module, so that the BMS, there is no stress on the BMS, so that there is no stress on the BMS, so that to balance the cell, there's no much of window or capacity loss there. So all the cells can be maintained at an equal level. So that's the importance of cell sorting. All the cells of similar tolerance values are in the same pack. That's the advantage. So this is the first step. Usually this is the first step in making any of the module or the pack. This is the most important part to do. So that is cell sorting. So cell sorting is usually done on IR, and depending on that, the cells are grouped. And then once these cells are sorted in a certain group, These cells are connected in series and parallel to get the module. Uh, and if there is a very big pack like a bus or a car, the slave BMS is something which is attached to the module, so that all the slave BMS go and talk to a master BMS which controls all the slave BMS. And then once this module is assembled, the module is tested. What tested are done over here? At the module level, they undergo a isolation test. Are there any open current flowing paths or something of that kind? And there is a charge discharge test for the module level. And these all modules are put together in a pack, and all the pack modules are connected in series or parallel as per the required configuration, and they're put in the enclosure. And then the last one is the master BMS, which is placed inside the pack. So master BMS is nothing but a BMS. If the pack is big, each module will have its slave BMS, which is controlled by a master BMS. And after this pack assembly is done, the pack is again tested for a few cycles of charge and discharge. And if this is fine, the last one is to discharge the pack up to 30% of SOC, because to ship the battery pack to any of the location, it has to be discharged so that it is safe. So this is something how the cell to module conversion takes place. This is the cell. The cells are sorted and grouped, and we have cell holders and we have bus bars. Now see, if we see over here, there are 4 and there are 6. So for example, let us assume 4 cells are connected in parallel, 6 cells are connected in series. So whatever be the capacity, that's the reason the cells are connected in parallel to get the capacity. Whereas in pouch cell, if you see, there are only cells connected. There are just cells connected in series. So that this cell is already having a certain capacity and it won't need anything to be connected in parallel. So that's how this is done in pouch cells. Whereas in cylindrical cells, you'll have to connect them in series and parallel. And you have bus bars. These are nickel bus bars usually, so that because these are welded directly, nickel has some strength, so that during vibrations and all, if there's a movement, if at all there's a movement, nickel has a strength to not tear. So this is cell holders and the cells. These are welded, and there's a slave BMS attached to it. It depends on the user's choice if he wants to have a slave BMS, or he can put a master BMS at all completely at the pack level. This is for the cylindrical, and then this is for the pouch. This is called the pouch cell. And if you see in the pouch cell, like, the pouch cell module has a lot of parts. It has an end plate, it has a compression pad, it has a cell holder, it has a thermal interface material, etc. And the reason why is pouch cell, usually when you subject it to charging and discharging, the cell expands. So to avoid the cell expanding to take place, you put a metal or a very solid, even if it's ABS, a very solid ABS end plate, and you use tie rods to completely pass through, and you tie it so that the cells are arrested, and the cells, even if they expand, they are not expanding. So to overcome that expanding, you use compression pads in between, so that the cell, when it is expanding, the compression pads do get compressed, so that the little bit of expansion doesn't affect the cells or the module structure. So this is how the cell blocks for the pouch cell is made. And the final step, after you tighten everything, you weld the whole cell for the interconnections, and that's how a module is made. So these are some of the representations of how the module and pack. This is an SOC indicator. SOC indicator is nothing but a fuel gauge. How you see in an IC vehicle, IC engine vehicle, what is the amount of charge available in the battery pack. You can put a connector and you can monitor it on the dashboard directly. And this is one of the battery pack which is having this is all pouch cells. These are all pouch cells. These are all pouch cell blocks, which are all connected as per the requirement of series or parallel and all. Since this is for Nissan Leaf, it is active cooling, which means there is a heat cooling plate, and there is active coolant which is flowing to extract the heat. So what are the important attributes of the battery pack? So now the battery packs are usually two types. One is fixed and one is portable ones. So portable ones are usually the two-wheelers, and the fixed ones, because these are very heavy, like 60 kgs or 70 kgs for three-wheelers especially, they cannot be, swapped, they cannot be removed, and again, you cannot place it on the vehicle that easy. So these are fixed. And LCV and buses are definitely fixed, that cannot be changed. It is very tedious job unless there is a very good infrastructure, you can quickly change those battery packs. So what are the common attributes for those battery packs? Ring rust protection. It has to be protected against dust and water. So IP65 or IP67, it can go even higher as per the vehicle requirement. And then thermal management, as we discussed earlier, passive cooling, which is basically using thermal interface materials. It is used for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, because two-wheelers and three-wheelers cannot afford a cooling plate and a coolant, because there's no much space there, and there's a lot of constraints there. So basically, we can use a passive cooling technique by using thermal interface materials for extracting heat, whereas active cooling for high voltage, which is for cars and buses, there it is must, because heat has to be extracted, there is space, and there are a lot of other components there where we can put a small pump and we can always recirculate it. And similarly, BMS protection features, all the BMS used in these battery packs should have cell balancing, it should have overcharge and discharge cutoffs, high temperature cutoffs, short circuit, and reverse polarity. As we have discussed earlier, it should have all these things. And every pack should have sustained a minimum vibration load of 3G. And a few battery pack attributes of two-wheeler are, it has to be swappable, because two-wheelers are something like, if you not now, I think if you can get time, you just go through a company called Gogoro. So they have a swappable kind of concept, or in India, there are companies like Sun Mobility who are working on swappable packs. So, or Bounce for that matter. Bounce, I think most of you might be knowing. So these are all portable packs. So once the battery pack is discharged, you can go to a charging station, replace the battery pack, and you can pay for the energy that you used. So those are all swapping battery packs, so that it has to be carried very easily. So it has to be more compact and portable with a weight less than 12 kgs. And all these packs are enabled with GPS and Bluetooth connectivity for a reason to understand where the battery pack is. For example, there's a charging station nearby. If you want to locate it, it's just like a Uber or Ola, which uses a telematics board. And you can use, there is an app available. You can open the app and you'll see that there's a charging station nearby. You can go there and you can swap the battery. So that's how the telematics is working. So it's similar to the Ola and Uber app, which is available. It's just that these are the vehicles which come to your doorstep. In case of battery, you will have to go to the charging station, put this battery into that, and take a charged battery. What are the advances in the field of lithium ion? So now cells, people are working on chemistries, people are working on mechanical structures, people are working on cathodes, anodes, electrolytes, etc. Now, what more is really important is electronics in the sensors. So to earlier, what happens is the sensors usually, which are taken care by the BMS, the sensors are placed on the cell body. But there is always a contact problem over there. So what happens is, instead of that, there are some advances which are happening and which are the research stage, where they put a sensor directly inside the cell. And these cell sensors are connected to the battery, to the BMS system, so that the cell internal temperature is directly monitored by the BMS. So that will have even more efficiency in the results. So the BMS can function even more. So this is one kind of advancement which is happening. The next one is to enable fast charging. So nowadays there is a lot of buzz about fast charging of the cell. How fast do you want to charge? This is similar like a petrol pump station or something, where you go, you fill it up, and you have to go on. So that's how the concept of this fast charging has come up. So people are exploring a lot of potentials over here. That is, what is happening is they are doing it at a cell level. So there is always a threshold for the cell degradation capacity, so that you cannot actually sense it by doing a cell testing on the cell tester or module tester. This has to be analyzed at a cell potential level, which is the electrode potential level. You give the points there, and depending on the cell electrochemistry data, you do a discharge of the charge rate. And at that point of time, you understand till what depth you can go to discharge, so that the potential of the electrode or the cathode or the anode are not disturbed. So that's how you can leverage the limit of how much you can go up to charge the cell even faster. So that's how this method is being worked out. It is still under process, or few companies are at a prototype stage. We hope this comes out soon. And then the testing of the battery. So yes, we have made a pack, we have designed a pack, we have made a pack, we have done all good testings and all. But the final one is, if you don't pass the testing of the battery pack, your pack is not certified and it cannot hit the roads. So that's the reason the pack has to be tested. So there are a lot of techniques which are being used, where you can put all the live real time scenarios into the simulation software, and it will give where the loopholes are. For example, over here, just like the faults like loose contacts, or a wire is broken, or a BMS is malfunctioning, or a fuse has blown up, or the contactor which is used is welded. So these kind of errors which are there, if you can give these kind of errors inside the simulation software, and you can monitor, is it working, is the BMS or such kind of pack, how is it functioning with that kind of faults. So these are all some testing sensitivities which are being worked upon. Yeah, and so these are some of the current opportunities which are there. So a lot of people, because in India we have gained this knowledge very recently, but few people have been very successful with their startups, which is especially Ether Energy is something everyone knows, and then Ola Electric is also coming in a very big way. And then we have customers like Bounce and Ion Energy are some of the successful startups in this field of lithium ion or the electric vehicle, I would say. Similarly, there is a scope of lot of development, or the people can explore areas of cell development in if you have a background from chemistry or materials, you could always look into a cell development program. Or if you are from mechanical engineering or a thermal engineering background, you can always work on the mechanical structures for the battery pack, because there are a lot of things that can be explored. And then if you're coming from electronics or electronic background, you can definitely work on BMS development, which is the cutting edge for any of the battery pack, which plays a major differentiator. And then there is hardware, and then there is hardware pack testing and validation. So these are some things which you can definitely work on those areas. And yes, lot of EV markets and the EV knowledge is not yet there in India. It's not the courses, because we don't have courses in India, especially for EVs. There's very limited knowledge, and most of these knowledges cannot, unless there's a course started in any of the universities, most of the things cannot be learned as how we learn for automobile engineering. It is a little bit of a challenge, but yes, we have several skill development centers where we can gain this kind of knowledge. And these are some of the companies which are hiring people with the knowledge, like Ola Electric or Bosch or Ether Energy, Exicom, Sun Mobility. A lot of big names which are there, and a few other names are yet going to come, like Audi is going to come up, Volvo is going to come up. So yeah, if you might have seen the news, Tesla is going to come up. Not sure when, but yes, they are also going to start their R&D in Bangalore. So a lot of big companies are going to come up. So yeah, there are a lot of opportunities if you can gain good knowledge in this space. Yeah.